The loaf of bread in your kitchen was made in about 3.5 hours, flour to wrapper. Your grandmother's loaf sat and fermented for up to 3 hours before it was even shaped. Yours didn't ferment at all. 0 minutes. And that isn't a conspiracy. It's a patented process invented in a village called Chorleywood in July 1961, and it is how most of the bread in Britain is made. Nobody took an ingredient out of your food. They took the waiting out. The tomato that was bred to ripen evenly and gave up 15% of its sugar to do it. The cinnamon in your cupboard that, if you're American, is almost certainly not cinnamon. The vanilla that has never once been near a vanilla plant. That's over 99% of it. The chicken that took 112 days to raise and now takes 47. And the honey, where Europe tested 320 jars at its own border and 46% came back suspicious. 6 things in your kitchen that were quietly changed. What they were changed for. What it cost. And, the part nobody ever does, how to get the real one back. One thing to hold on to, because it makes all 6 make sense. Almost nothing in your kitchen was changed to hurt you. That's the lazy version, and it's wrong. Everything here was changed for speed, shelf life, or transport. Made faster, kept longer, moved further. And what got traded away almost never was a vitamin. Fermentation is time. Ripening on the plant is time. Curing a pod is time. An animal growing up is time. Time is the one ingredient that costs a producer money every hour and appears nowhere on a label. So it went first. Start with the one you ate this morning. Britain didn't lose sourdough. Britain lost the clock. 1961. A research lab at Chorleywood in Hertfordshire. The problem was a British one. Homegrown wheat was too weak to make a decent loaf, so the country imported most of its bread wheat. Expensive and strategically uncomfortable. And before anyone sneers at what they came up with, they solved it. British bread wheat went from about 30% homegrown to 80%. That's their own industry's number. Bread got cheaper and stopped going stale in a day. So how do you make weak flour behave like strong flour without waiting? You beat it. The Chorleywood process drives about 11 watt-hours per kilo of mechanical energy into the dough in under 5 minutes. That figure is quoted in the patent by the firm that built the mixers. Violent mixing does in 3 minutes what fermentation does in 3 hours. It develops the gluten. Add extra yeast, a little fat, an oxidant, and you go from flour to a wrapped sliced loaf in about 3.5 hours. Bulk fermentation, from 3 hours to 0. And here's the honest part. There's a popular claim this made people ill. 2 randomized human trials tested slow fermented bread against ordinary bread, and both came back null. Modern wheat wasn't bred for more gluten either. The USDA checked. Gluten hasn't moved since the 1920s. What was lost is flavor and time, and one thing you can't see. Turn the pack over. European law forces 3 phrases onto the label: emulsifier, preservative, flour treatment agent. Those are the fingerprints of a short process loaf. They deliver in minutes what time gives for free. And if a pack says sourdough but also lists yeast, it was raised by commercial yeast. There's a baguette on UK shelves listing dehydrated, devitalized wheat sourdough. Devitalized is the manufacturer's own word. It means they killed the culture first. But no label will ever tell you the enzymes. Under European labeling law, they count as processing aids, and processing aids don't have to be declared. You can read every word on that bag and still not know what's in it. So don't test the loaf. Ask the baker how long the dough sat, and buy from whoever can answer. Your tomato is worse on purpose, and somebody published exactly how much worse. 1964, California. The Bracero program ends and the handpickers go. The industry's answer is a machine, and a machine picks a field once. So every tomato has to be ready on the same day and survive being shaken off the vine. It worked at a scale that's hard to argue with. In 1962, 1% of the California crop was machine harvested. By 1970, 99.9%. Yields went from about 6 tons an acre to 55. Now, the tomato that ripens evenly, all one shade of red, no green shoulder. That's the one breeders wanted. Why would making a tomato ripen evenly make it taste worse? Because the green shoulder was doing something. In 2012, a paper in Science identified the mutation, uniform ripening, which knocks out a gene that builds chloroplasts in the fruit. Chloroplasts are how the fruit photosynthesizes and makes its own sugar. Breed out the patchy green and you breed out the sugar factory. The paper measured it, 10 to 15% less sugar. And its abstract says it plainly, flavor was compromised in exchange for desirable production traits. Then we finish the job at home. Chill a tomato 7 days at 5 degrees and it loses 65% of its aroma compounds. A 76-person panel could taste it. 3 days back on the counter did not bring them back. So, counter, not fridge. Damage starts below about 12 degrees. Buy small because smaller tomatoes reliably carry more sugar. Cherry and grape types are the easy supermarket win. And for cooking, buy canned. That sounds backwards, but processing tomatoes are machine-picked, fully ripe, and canned within hours. It's the one part of the industrial chain that doesn't pick green. One correction because it cuts against the easy story. Heirlooms are not automatically better. In a 3-country panel of 343 people, modern varieties beat the traditional ones on flavor. The enemy was never modern. It was unripe. There are 2 completely different barks sold under one word, and one of them is legally allowed to be called cinnamon anywhere. True cinnamon, Cinnamomum verum, comes from Sri Lanka. It's pale, and a quill is many paper-thin layers rolled tight like a cigar. It crumbles when you press it. Cassia comes mostly from Indonesia and Vietnam. Dark red-brown, one thick, hard, hollow curl you can barely snap, and cassia isn't a fraud. It's a real spice. It's stronger, and it's what American cinnamon actually tastes like. Swap Ceylon into a cinnamon roll, and most people would call it weak. So why did cassia take over almost completely? Have a guess before I say it. Money, and it isn't close. At the U.S. border, cassia runs about $4.38 a kilo, Ceylon $9.81, half the price with roughly twice the cinnamaldehyde per gram, a 4- or 5-fold advantage per unit of flavor. In 2024, Indonesia and Vietnam together supplied 86.5% of American cinnamon imports by weight. Sri Lanka, under 9. There is one real difference. Cassia carries coumarin, around 3,000 milligrams a kilo, against single digits in Ceylon. And now the restraint, because this gets wildly overstated. Europe's Food Safety Authority says exceeding the daily limit threefold for 1 to 2 weeks is not a safety concern. Germany's Risk Institute ran the scare for 6 years and turned up one suspected case of harm. For a 60-kilo adult, the guideline is about 3/4 of a teaspoon of cassia a day, every day. It's a seasoning, not a hazard. If you want the real one, buy quills and grind them yourself. Ground cinnamon cannot be told apart by eye, because grinding destroys the structure. In a recent European survey, 9% of samples labeled Ceylon were actually cassia. So read for the species, Cinnamomum verum or Zeylanicum, or the phrase Ceylon cinnamon, which is legally protected in Europe. The bare word cinnamon is protected nowhere. Many thin layers, crumbles in your fingers. Cinnamon, one thick hard curl. Cassia. That's the whole test, and it takes a second. Stop. Before this turns into a list of things that were stolen from you, we have to be fair, because one of these changes is the reason some of you are alive. Milk used to carry bovine tuberculosis, not rarely. In 1921, deaths from abdominal tuberculosis in British children under 5, the classic signature of infected milk, numbered 1,107. By 1953, after testing herds and pasteurizing the milk, 12. In the United States, bovine TB killed around 15,000 people in 1917, 3 times as many as die from all foodborne illness today. And the modern number, in case this feels like ancient history, outbreaks from unpasteurized dairy run about 150 times higher per unit consumed than from pasteurized. Pasteurized dairy actually causes more illnesses in total, and 1/5 as many hospitalizations. What did we lose? A meta-analysis of 40 studies found real drops in thiamine, riboflavin, folate, and vitamin C, protein, calcium, and fat, unaffected. And milk was never a meaningful source of vitamin C anyway. So the question was never should they have changed the food. Some of it badly needed changing, and the people who did it were not villains. The question is what we got in exchange, and whether we'd still take the deal if anyone had shown us the receipt. 3 left. They get harder from here. Everything the internet taught you about testing honey at home is false, and the people who say so are the honey industry itself. In 2023, the European Union pulled 320 consignments of imported honey at its own borders and sent them to a laboratory. 46% came back suspicious. From China, 74%. From Turkey, 93%. And now the part most videos leave out, which you need in order to trust the rest of this. The Commission itself says those methods are not validated across laboratories, that the results are qualitative only and must not be generalized. 46% flagged, 7 operators sanctioned. Suspicious is not proven. So you'd like to test your own jar. The water test, the thumb test, the flame, the paper towel. Which of those actually works? None of them. The National Honey Board publishes a document, literally titled 5 False Home Tests. Everyone is really an uncalibrated moisture test, and honey is naturally 14 to 20% water, so real honey fails them constantly. To actually detect syrup, Europe needed nuclear magnetic resonance and high-resolution mass spectrometry, and it could still only say suspicious. There's a bigger tell in how the fraud worked. Investigators found operators using accredited European laboratories as their own quality control, testing a blend, adjusting it, testing again until it passed. That's not a bad batch, that's a product engineered to beat the test. So stop testing and start tracing. Treat blend of EU and non-EU honeys as the biggest red flag on the shelf. It's a label that means we're not telling you. And this one has a date. A European directive abolishes that phrase from the 14th of June, 2026. After that, jars must name the countries of harvest, in order, with percentages. Until then, buy from a named beekeeper with an address, or a single origin jar, because adulteration is a blending crime. A jar that never entered a blending tank never entered the risk pool, and a price check beats every folk test. Bulk honey lands at about €2.30 a kilo. Rice syrup costs 40 to 60 cents. If a jar sits near the syrup end of that gap, the arithmetic is telling you what the water glass never could. They didn't change chicken. They changed the chicken. In 1925, an American meat chicken took 112 days to reach 2.5 pounds. Today, 47.5 days to reach 6.5. Feed per pound of bird down from 4.7 to 1.7. The industry publishes that proudly as a performance table, because look what it bought. Since 1960, the real price of chicken has fallen by about half, while beef's hasn't fallen at all. That is the cheapest animal protein in human history, and it fed a great many people who could not otherwise have afforded any. So, what did that? Better feed? Antibiotics? Hormones? Have a guess. None of them. Hormones have been illegal in American poultry since 1959. It was breeding, and there's a controlled experiment that proves it, which almost no food story can offer. In 2003, researchers raised a 1957 breed and a 2001 breed side by side on the identical 1957 diet. At 42 days, the 1957 bird weighed 539 grams. The 2001 bird, same food, 2,126. Then they fed the old breed modern feed, and it went from 539 grams to 578. The diet is a rounding error next to the bird. And I have to correct something I nearly told you. The famous claim that chicken went from 8.6 grams of fat to 22.8 comes from one small study of whole carcasses with the skin on, measured against lean meat baselines with no sample size given. The USDA and Britain's national tables both put that same food at 13 to 15 grams, and skinless breast is unchanged. Still about 31 grams of protein to 3.5 of fat. What genuinely changed is the animal. Carcass fat up about 60%, breast meat roughly doubled in a bird that reaches slaughter weight in 6 weeks. Most of the label is noise. No hormones added is legally required to be followed by a note that they're banned anyway. Cage-free on chicken meat is meaningless. Meat birds are never caged. And the one most people get wrong, organic changes the feed, not the bird. No minimum slaughter age, no breed requirement, so most organic chicken is the same fast-growing bird-eating organic grain. What actually bites is age and breed. In Europe, free range means a legal minimum of 56 days. Traditional free range, 81, and that one must be a slow-growing strain. If you want a different animal, you have to name it. Breed is the only word on a pack that reliably changes what's inside it. Over 99% of the world's vanilla flavor has never been near a vanilla plant. And that's the legal kind. A vanilla pod is hand-pollinated, one flower at a time, then cured for months. And after all that, the pod is only 0.2 to 0.3% vanillin, the molecule you're actually tasting, which is why nobody could ever have supplied the world this way. Vanillin inside a pod at peak prices works out around $30,000 a kilo. From petroleum, 10 to 15. A 2 to 3,000-fold gap for a molecule identical either way. So here's the thing worth guessing at. The same molecule made in 2 different factories. One is legally natural, one is legally artificial. What decides? Not the chemistry, the feedstock. Under American regulation, vanillin derived from spruce lignin, a paper mill byproduct, is natural. The identical molecule from petroleum is artificial. Same atoms, same arrangement, indistinguishable in the bottle. The word on the label describes where it started, not what it is. And while we're here, the beaver story. Castoreum in your vanilla. Total American consumption of castoreum runs under 300 pounds a year against roughly 20 million pounds of bean-derived vanilla. It is off by a factor of about 70,000. It's not in your ice cream. American law gives you a ladder, and almost nobody knows the middle rungs. Pure vanilla extract is defined. At least 13.35 ounces of beans per gallon, at least 35% alcohol. Vanilla flavoring, which sounds fake, has the same bean loading. It's just under 35% alcohol. That's the one people wrongly avoid. Only imitation has no beans at all. Or make it. The federal minimum works out to roughly 3 ounces of beans in a bottle of vodka. That's it. That's the recipe, copied out of the law. And with bean prices where they are now, it's the cheapest it's been in a decade. 6 foods, 6 different industries. And the same thing taken out of every one of them. Not a vitamin, not a mineral. Time, 3 hours of fermentation, a month ripening on the plant, months curing a pod, 65 extra days of an animal being alive. Everyone is a cost on somebody's spreadsheet, and not one appears on a label. There is no package in the world that reads, "This was rushed." That's the whole trick. You were never lied to about the ingredients. They're mostly still there. What was taken was the one input nobody thought to measure, and it went first because it was the only one you couldn't see leaving. And notice what almost every fix here had in common. Not a test, not a gadget. Ask the baker how long the dough sat. Buy the quill, not the powder. Read the country, not the claim. Name the breed. Put 3 ounces of beans in a bottle and wait. Your grandmother wasn't a better shopper than you. She just lived in a world where the waiting was still included. Next time, olive oil. And it's not the story you've been told. The fraud everybody warns about turns out to be almost absent from the shelf. The real problem is something much more ordinary, and there's a test for it you can do with the back of your throat.